There being a quorum, I'm going to introduce everyone just before we begin. Scott Monroe is to my right. Raise your hand again. Village Board member Jason Leon to my right. Art Devlin to my right. Mayor Craig Randall. Peter Holderried. Bob Miller. Derek Doty. Jack Favreau and Jay Rand, town board members. We welcome you here this evening. Madam Clerk, could you please read the notice?
Notice of public hearing. Please take notice that the Village Board of the Village of Lake Placid and Town Board of the Town of North Elba will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 26, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Conference Center, 2608 Main Street, 2nd floor, Lake Placid, New York, to consider a local law regarding vacation rentals in the Village of Lake Placid, Town of North Elba. The text of the proposed local law is available for inspection by any interested person at the offices of the village clerk or town clerk, 2693 Main Street, Lake Placid, New York, as well as northelba.org. All interested persons are invited to attend the public hearing and will be given an opportunity to be heard. If you plan to read a prepared statement, it would be helpful to provide for accuracy of minutes. Signed, Lori Curtis Dudley, Town Clerk, and Anita Estling, Village Clerk.
Thank you, Anita. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Robbie Politi, and I'm the town supervisor of the town of North Elba. The purpose of this hearing is to receive both oral and written testimony from the public relative to the proposed provisions of this short-term rental law. This has been a long process that began in 2017. The town and village and the Community Development Commission have met on various occasions to address the impacts of short-term rentals on our community as well as residential neighborhoods. The end result has been the drafting of a local law which we believe is a step forward toward mitigating many of the negative effects pertaining to such uses. We have addressed parking, occupancy, public safety, permitting, enforcement, and violations. It may not be a perfect law, no law is, but it is a step forward towards regulating an unrestrained situation, and it is inevitable that the law will be subject to further change as time passes. For those of you intending to speak this evening, the clerk will call your name. Please approach the podium. Would you please give us your name again very slowly and your local address? We hope that you have taken the time to read the recent modifications in the proposed law and that you will focus on those issues which are relevant to you. This is not a question and answer forum. When the oral portion of the hearing is closed, the boards will hold the record open until September the 13th for the receipt and inclusion of additional written testimony. I want to thank you all for attending and for your insight. The town and village boards will use this information gathered here this evening for consideration in further modifying or moving to enact the law. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the first witness?
First speaker is Anthony Pasquarelli. The second will be Rick Cassidy. A reminder, you have 3 minutes, and in 30 seconds I will give you a heads up. Anthony?
Podium. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Pasquarelli. I live in Wilmington, New York, 33 Quaker Mountain Road. I'm a caretaker for a property on Lake Placid. They just started doing Airbnbs, and I have been running into all kinds of situations, feeling life threatened. There's only supposed to be 10 people on the property. The fire alarm goes off, I get called in the middle of the night. I call the contact person, can't get a hold of them. It takes me 20 minutes to get up here. I show up, there's 20 cars in the driveway. All kinds of lights flashing, music blaring. I go up to the window, there's 4 strippers in there. two of them in chairs with their legs, doing what they do. And all the furniture is moved. This is a multi-million-dollar home, all antiques. I'm not a big guy. There's 20 cars. How many guys came in the car? Each car, So I called someone and said, give me 10 minutes, call my phone. One of the guys seen me through the window, came outside, started to talk to me. Of course, they send out the biggest guy, 6'5", whatever, to back him up, and pretty much told him they were going to have to drag it. Anyway, I talked to him, ended up letting them stay, because I didn't want to kick them out, drive them around Lake Placid drunk to go wherever else to stay. So anyway, that's one instance. Just this weekend, I had some more people out there. I went and got the garbage. I find a piece of wood from an antique chair. I start looking around. There's a chair missing, a different chair is put in the spot. I call the guy, he's, hard to get a hold of. Finally, left him a message. He gets back to me, says he made phone calls and that they threw it in the fireplace. I had neighbors calling me. The fire alarm went off in the morning after leaving them messages to get a hold of me because I was getting complaints. Neighbors,
30 seconds.
Neighbors had to sleep with their windows closed, and it's embarrassing. And it's funny for me to be here, yes, because I'm working for someone, but they're done with it. They don't like putting me in the situation and apologizing to the community. And I have more, but I guess I don't have that much time. So it's just an ongoing situation where it's a big house. They rent other
Your time is
places,
up.
and everybody stays there for the day.
Thank you.
Next up, Rick Cassidy, followed by Donna Morris-Calvi.
Gentlemen, ladies. I usually don't need this. I'm Rick Cassidy, 525 Mackenzie Pond Road. I was born and raised in Lake Placid. My sons were born and raised in Lake Placid. I have 9 grandchildren living here in Lake Placid. I was on the village board for 6 years. My dad was on for over 20 years. In the 90s, I brought up this problem about this to the village board, as Jim Morganson will. And we didn't do anything. We should have taxed them, and we didn't. It's a lot of money gone now. But the important thing is, I'm not against vacation rentals. I'm against how many we have. I've called 7 other communities, Lake Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe, North Lake Tahoe, see if I remember all these, Honolulu, Sedona, Arizona, Lake George, Skaneateles, and Key West. All of them, no more. They said, too much. Now, these are places that are 4 times bigger than us, and they have just a little bit more. Fewer, almost as many, or about the same as we have vacation rentals here. And they said no more. They all said the same thing. We're losing our community. We are losing our community and our history. And our history is important. We put on 2 Olympics here in Lake Placid with the people that lived here. Most of them had key jobs. A lot of us were involved in it at the time. And it's important that we keep what's left of this community. Now, the village board has a proposal that addresses that. It says no more right now. And I think we should have a moratorium now until we make a decision one way or another. But if we don't make a moratorium now, there are going to be a lot of houses getting scooped up. I'm sure of it. And I really think it's important that we do it now and try to maintain the community we have here in Lake Placid. I love this community, and I can't say more than that. And I was going to, again, have a prepared statement. I said, no, I'm speaking from the heart. And I want to thank everybody. Thanks for your time, and good luck to everybody else.
Next up, Donna Morris-Calvi, followed by Doug Calvi.
Again, I'm Donna Morris Calvi, and the local address is 93 Elm Street. We all know there's a shortage of affordable housing in Lake Placid. In fact, community members and leaders have been concerned for a while since a report was submitted in 2010 by the LA Group for the Tri-Lakes Housing Task Force, which examined the housing crisis in Lake Placid and other nearby communities and detailed the steps to combat it. They found that new construction of affordable housing is required to support year-round residents, students, transients, and the growing aging population. But small communities have such limited resources and struggles, it took this latest movement to regulate short-term rentals to shine the spotlight on the affordable housing problem again. I would like to commend Emily Kilburn-Politi, the chair of the Joint Housing Committee, as well as members Dean Dietrich, Eli Schwartzberg, Peter Rowland, and Jessica Kelly, who are spearheading the work to finally address this. But I'm concerned, despite the efforts of the town board and the village board to establish regulations for short-term rentals, some members of the community are blaming STRs for problems unrelated and are not fully appreciating the economic benefits STRs bring to this community. I believe these regulations do a very good job, and I urge the town board, village boards to stay the course and just make a few changes to prevent just a few of the rules from killing the goose that's been laying the golden eggs. I encourage members of the community to show appreciation for the Joint Housing Committee. I mean, these are volunteers, and they're dedicating their evenings and days to trying to solve this problem, which will take time. Again, the town and village board members, I would like to just ask, if the regulation allows 2 persons per bedroom plus 2, why shouldn't it also allow the same number of cars parked for these individuals if there's adequate parking? Secondly, why should STR homeowners and caretakers be held liable for the bad behavior of our guests, even if they spell out the legal requirements in rental agreements? We strongly encourage the boards to table this proposal until they work out the last few very important details. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to submit a statement from Todd and Sharon Middendorf, who could not attend because of a death in the family.
Thank you very much. Next up is Doug Calvi, followed by Bryce Cutler.
I don't like following here. Doug Calvi, 93 Elm. We built and own High Peaks House on the corner of Hillcrest and Elm. The former early 1900s house that was there was on the market for over 2 years when we purchased it. We rent out our house around 100 nights a year, predominantly for reunions and special occasions such as anniversaries. For some reason, 80th birthdays are very big, and bridal parties. A couple weeks ago, we had a family and bridal party stay 8 nights for their daughter's wedding. The family made wedding plans and secured lodging for this important event over 1 year ago. For their 130 wedding guests, they lined up rooms at the Whiteface Club, Crown Plaza, Golden Arrow, and some of the other hotels. My point with that was hotels and STRs do need each other, just like the Yankees and Red Sox fans. This family's wedding budget was $75,000, which included rehearsal dinner and a reception at the cottage, wedding and reception at the Whiteface Club, shuttle service, bridal party, catering, hairstyling, etc. On top of this was the money spent on hotel stays, food, shopping on Main Street. Now let's imagine a potential future scenario of a similar wedding family interested in Lake Placid for its lodging options to stay together for a week in a vacation house while their guests stay in hotels. This hypothetical family secures blocks of hotel rooms 1 year in advance and looks for vacation rentals, houses for the bridal party and immediate family. And that's, like I said, we met with people this morning that were exactly that. The immediate family likes to stay together. But they are not able to lock anything down because the STRs don't know if their permit will be renewed within the time frame. Not able to secure their preferred lodging choices, they move their destination wedding to Stratton, Vermont, or Mount Tremblant, or many of the other places that are available. Or worst case, which really worries us, is this hypothetical family is a week from checking in when they are notified their rental house is not available due to revocation of their permit from unsubstantiated complaints by an area resident who might have a vendetta against STRs. With the currently written regulations, it's possible for anybody to file unsubstantiated complaint, which could result in the owner's STR permit suspension. Thank you. While an appeal is being processed. We believe the law needs to be modified to, 1, allow an appeals process if a violation is submitted, during which time the property can continue with its rentals, and 2, allow only an abutting neighbor to complain to the town or enforcement offices. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Bryce Cutler, followed by Eric Schwenker.
Good evening, everybody. Bryce Cutler, 10 Middle Street. I am one of the owners of the Lake Placid House. I'm speaking tonight to tell you a little bit about why I am here and why we purchased a home in Lake Placid. My wife brought me here for my 40th birthday nearly 10 years ago, and we had a memorable first weekend away and stayed at the Crown Plaza. It was our first of many trips to Lake Placid, and we have stayed at almost every hotel in town, and we also stayed at a couple of short-term rentals with friends over the years. We have been back in every season and loved it so much that we purchased a house with our friends and business partners. We rent our house because when we are not using it, it is very beneficial to help cover some of the expenses. We just closed on our property in December of last year, and I can assure you, we are not getting rich on our property. We are very considerate of our neighbors, both when we are using the house and with the renters we approve to rent the house. They have to go through an approval process to rent our house. When we purchased our house, we thought that we would rent it to people from within a 3 to 4 hour drive. But as we have discovered, many families love to come to Lake Placid from all over the country. And our first 3 guests came from Detroit, Chicago, and North Carolina for Christmas, New Year's, and a ski week with their families to stay together. Although I have only been enjoying this community for 10 years, I have some great life memories that have been made here. I've never had a bad experience with anyone here and have supported many of the businesses in town. I treat this place like it is my hometown. We care about our neighbors and community here just as much as we do our home communities where we have our primary residence. I know there are short-term rental homeowners who are absentee and just rent to the highest dollar. That is not us. That is not many of us who are here before you tonight. I ask you to please hold off on the proposed legislation and work together to keep our community the wonderful place that it is. Eliminating or deeply restricting the short-term rentals just pushes away families to other places and decreases our exposure to the revenue that these renters bring to everyone in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Eric Schwenker, followed by Ethan Perry.
Good evening. I'm Eric Schwenker, representative of Gold Medal Hospitality, which is a group of homeowners and taxpayers in the town of North Elba in the village of Lake Placid. I'm also a frequent user of short-term rentals in the Lake Placid region for the last number of years with friends as part of a reunion effort where we every year engage in ski rental for use of Whiteface to get together again. In any event, I'm addressing you here today on behalf of Gold Medal Hospitality. And on behalf of them, let me just turn to the boards of the village of Lake Placid and the town of North Elba and thank you for the substantial efforts that you have done in redrafting these proposed regulations. Gold Medal has always been in favor of reasonable regulation for short-term rentals, as you've just heard from the speaker before me. They appreciate that because they take care to determine who they're renting to. But also, while we thank you for that, Gold Medal does not believe that the boards have reached really a gold medal of regulation, which we feel that this community deserves. I will address 2 points and 2 issues to take into consideration relative to the proposed law. The first is section 11.4, which purports to impose strict criminal liability on property owners for conduct of another. First and foremost, the United States Supreme Court has wildly disfavored strict liability for criminal statutes. But the idea that it would impose strict criminal liability on conduct of another's is submitted by Gold Medal that the penal law of the state of New York and various common law holdings from the Court of Appeals would prohibit such imposition. The second issue, although not all the issues that we would care to address, but the second issue that I think requires a discussion here tonight, and was just addressed by the speakers before me, is that there's no opportunity for a stay. It's eliminated in section 11.2. But that seems to run contrary to a state statute, which is section 267-A, which provides for that a stay is mandatory, even in enforcement proceedings. So while the proposed law tends to eliminate a stay under 8.3 of the existing Town of North Elba Code,
30 seconds.
that would, again, that's not where it starts. That's not where the stay derives from. It derives from 267A of the town law. We urge you on behalf of Gold Medal to table the discussion further, to address these deficiencies, to again reach that gold medal of regulation. Again, thank you though for what you've reached.
Thank you. Next up is Ethan Perry, followed by Deborah Brown.
Good evening. Ethan Perry, 213 Victor Herbert Road. As a psychotherapist, I quite often recommend to my clients that they travel north to Lake Placid to enjoy the high peaks, serene lakes, and awesome history of this area. They return from here inspired and invigorated. Our family has been in the Adirondacks for generations, and it's that same feeling that inspired my family to invest in this town so that our relatives and friends would have a meeting place for generations into the future. While we've been here, we've used all of our rental income to restore our home, which dates back over 100 years, in order to sustain its legacy as a meeting place for friends and families to enjoy Lake Placid. Like others in this area, we want to provide the best experience for renters so that they will return year after year and partake in all that Lake Placid has to offer. To that end, we continue to work towards a high standard of accommodation and management, and I believe everyone here is aiming to accomplish legislation that maintains a high standard of accommodation, which respects the needs of our neighbors. We're seeking to preserve for homeowners who do maintain these high standards the right and opportunity to rent their property to short-term visitors. Progress has been made on the proposed legislation which would regulate these properties, but we still have further to go to make sure the legislative process is done fairly. Only with fair legislation in place can we make sure that we continue to provide economic support to the local economy. The numbers that are mentioned here about our impact on the local economy should not be taken lightly or taken for granted. Budgets have already been set, money has already been allocated for projects in this town, so why disrupt the rhythm of income coming into Lake Placid when vacation rentals have such a positive economic impact on this community? Those who visit our homes wish to return to Lake Placid, and they also recommend the area to others. If the environment is made unfriendly and inhospitable to the experience these families have grown to love, they will seek other locations to have their family reunions or get-togethers. In addition, the negative optics created by an unfriendly business environment could have far-reaching effects on the town. The internet, social media, and changes in priorities have created a culture where individuals wanting to attain a home-away-from-home experience have sought out home rentals. This does not mean that traditional accommodation is falling behind. Far from it, as the data show. But we can work towards a system which supports the town and the economic interests of residents. We do care about affordable housing for all. This issue is widespread across New York State and has been for decades, far before the advent of Airbnb and VRBO. The cause is not short-term rentals, but it's a multifaceted cause that includes pre-World War II homes being inefficient and needing significant maintenance and repairs, and the cost of ownership also exceeding what incomes can afford. Many of the homes purchased by vacation rental owners were on the market needing significant work, and no locals were buying these homes. Vacation rental owners bought them and restored them. So I hope we can work together to address the faults with the current proposal and develop more just regulations so that we can continue to help this economy thrive. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Deborah Brown, followed by Stacia Takach.
My name is Debbie Brown, and the address is 337 Whiteface Inn Lane. I've been coming to Lake Placid for the past 12 years, and a couple of years ago I finally bought a property which I rent out mostly during the summer. I use the home myself whenever I can, and never make quite enough to cover all my expenses. But I pay my taxes, provide jobs for local services, buy groceries here, eat at the restaurants, play mini golf, have a gym membership, and between my renters and me, we contribute to Lake Placid's healthy tourist economy. It seems that one of the issues driving the proposed regulatory laws about short-term rentals is the year-round residents' feeling that the sense of community has been lost. I understand that having trash and noise issues next door to one's home are frustrating. The proposed laws are starting to deal with those issues. But I've heard a lot of talk blaming the short-term rentals for destroying the sense of community in the village, even though the number of local residents has remained the same. I maintain that Lake Placid itself is the catalyst behind these changes. Think about it. There are so many events here, huge events, which are gladly hosted year after year, attracting participants and spectators from outside the area. It's not the short-term rentals that are causing more and more visitors each year to want to come to Lake Placid. It's the yearly horse shows, the Ironman, the lacrosse tournaments, Olympic training, the upcoming Winter World University Games, etc., that have turned Lake Placid into an exciting and fun destination. Clearly, the visitors are demanding short-term rentals, especially groups of 5 or more people who prefer a vacation home to a rental, to a hotel. Unless the village wants these groups to spend their time and dollars in other towns instead of in Lake Placid, then we all have to actually be thankful for the visitors who come here and provide salaries and jobs for the local residents and businesses and tax money to the village. Lake Placid can try to regain its lost sense of community by discontinuing these events and thereby reducing the number of visitors. But I'm pretty sure we're long past that possibility. However, if we had a task force made up of representatives from the various interested groups, in other words, local residents, short-term rental owners, hotel owners, board members, etc., perhaps we could get some of the sticking points of these proposed laws ironed out and come up with legislation that is fair and keeps Lake Placid as a lovely place to live, work, compete, and vacation, and start creating a new sense of community.
Next up, Stacia Takach, followed by Pete Bolos.
Good evening. My name is Stacia Takach. I'm proud to call myself a local of Lake Placid. I live at 3 Stagecoach Way, which is, to most locals, the Lake Placid Stagecoach Inn. My husband and I own the Lake Placid Stagecoach Inn since 2017 and own a few STRs. I was first introduced to Lake Placid in '04 when my husband, then boyfriend, brought me here to take in the splendor of the fall in the Adirondacks. We stayed at an STR in the Whiteface Club. It was our own little romantic getaway from the craziness of life. We returned to that same STR at least 6 times over the next 5 years. During our visits, we patronized local restaurants, bars, shops, gift shops. We got engaged on top of Newmark and then later married at the Whiteface Club. If it wasn't for that STR and the Whiteface Club, I would not have understood that it's possible for us to live here in Lake Placid and make a living. We've worked our tails off to get here. My husband and I are not from a family or families of financial means. What that means is we've worked and scraped and sacrificed short-term ones for long-term goals. We work 70+ hours a week to get here. We are the pinnacle of hard work and dedication to a goal and to this town. Our properties contribute over $26,000 a year in property tax as well as school tax, along with 3% bed tax and and sales tax, which vary upon occupancy. That doesn't even scratch the surface as what we do for the town for other local businesses, housekeepers, caretakers, restaurants, attractions, community members that we refer business to. I am all for smart regulation. We spend a lot of time educating our guests as to what the expectations are. We don't overrent our houses. We have ample parking. We also make sure that they understand the noise ordinance in the town. We want to make sure that our properties are good for not only out-of-town visitors, but keep our community as to what we fell in love with so long ago. We've done this all without any input from the town, and we've never had an incident. STRs are the future, the way people want to travel. We can stay relevant or be another North Country town that dies due to lack of industry, commerce, or attraction. Saranac Lake and Jay are lying in wait, waiting for Lake Placid to make a mistake so they can reap the benefits and build their towns to be the replacement for Lake Placid. Members of this community and parts of this legislation try to make a distinction between provisions between locals and non-locals and creates a hostile, exclusive environment that is, by definition, selective enforcement. Selective enforcement is an issue that this town combats on a daily basis because laws and codes get passed without clear and concise regulation. This ambiguity is what muddies the water and gets the town into trouble. I implore you tonight to put a stay on voting. There are still portions of the proposed legislation that are contradictory in multiple sections, and other sections are simply illegal. We are, in my opinion, 90% there.
Time is up.
We're almost at 100.
Thank you. Next up, Pete Olos, followed by Huda Shedel.
Good evening, I'm Peter Bolos. My wife Sandra and I have been coming to Lake Placid for somewhere around 30 years. And I've seen a lot of changes go on in Lake Placid. And honestly, I haven't seen a lot of negative changes in Lake Placid. We have a place up on Morningside Drive. When we first started coming to Lake Placid, we would drive through this town and think Main Street is really quaint, really beautiful. It's got a lot of little shops. It's got nice restaurants. It's the classic pretty hometown America. We would drive through the village where the houses were, and we were blown away by how many rundown homes there were, big homes mostly, that were just in horrendous disrepair. We always wanted to buy a place in Placid, but we'd look at these big homes and thought there's just no way to financially fix these places up. They're just money pits. Fast forward about 15 years, and about 15 years ago we noticed that some of these big homes are getting purchased. And somebody's putting a lot of money into these big homes. We stopped at some of these sites where they're working on these homes, and I mean, they're doing everything, plumbing, electrical, just restoring these homes, and they're beautiful. And we're looking at these homes thinking, somebody's got a vision for these homes. And we stayed at a number of different places, maybe some places what you would call short-term rental. We stayed in hotels, we stayed in motels. And when we come up with a group of people, we'd want to stay in a place together, so we'd stay in one of these big homes. And they were beautiful, really well cared for. And we rent out our little place, our little townhouse up on Morningside Drive, and we're very selective, we're very careful, we have a property manager. Lake Placid has had a history from the Lake Placid Club right up till today of always having a lot of visitors, maybe because of the Olympics. Lake Placid Club introduced people to winter sports. It's my understanding they had, I think, 110 what would be considered short-term rentals back then, the Lake Placid Club alone. In any event, I look at the town and I think at this point, with a modern way of doing business, you can't do it just with hotels. You can't do it without short-term rentals. My feeling is, we should be embracing short-term rentals. We should be putting reasonable permits to have a short-term rental, reasonable bed tax that the short-term rental should be paying. A portion of that money probably should be going to lifelong people that live here full-time, maybe to offset some of their property taxes as relief. But you can't do it without short-term rentals. You can kill a really good thing and really damage the town irreparably if you go that route. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Next up, Huda Shedelman, followed by Laurel Michaels.
If anyone wants to sit, there are seats in the front.
This isn't church, you come on up.
Yeah. If you want to.
Huda Scheidelman, we're at 213 Victor Herbert Road. Guest rentals have long been part of the fabric of the history of Lake Placid and surrounding communities. Now this legacy has become a vital part of the economy of this town. Vacation rentals account for more than $32 million a year in revenue spent in local businesses alone. This $32 million does not include the millions of dollars paid out annually by these homeowners to local contractors, housekeepers, and caretakers, nor does it include the millions of dollars in bed taxes and property taxes paid annually by owners who rent their homes. All of this income feeds the strong infrastructure, school system, and tax base that Lake Placid has enjoyed in recent years. What research indicates is that those who wish to stay in hotels do not want to stay in homes, and those who wish to stay in homes do not want to stay in hotels. While home rentals have become more popular, hotel room bookings have also never been higher in Lake Placid. The rising trend seen by many travelers' preference to stay in a home-like setting is not going away. In fact, these guests, if denied their preference of lodging, will not change their preferences, but will simply travel to other destinations to meet their needs. Regulations which are too restrictive will send business away from Lake Placid and result in multiple properties for sale, a decline in used sales, and a terrible ripple effect which will hurt everyone in Lake Placid. We applaud the board for amending the proposed legislation in a much more reasonable tone, but we strongly encourage them to table this proposal to address the following 4 items. Number 1, matching number of parking spaces to number of bedrooms. The current maximum of 6 spaces makes little sense for a property which has beds for 24 individuals and parking for many more than 6 cars. Number 2, this legislation should allow only abutting neighbors to file a complaint. As the regulation stands now, it will create a culture in this town which pits one against another. Even though many may not in any way be affected by the occurrences on a rental property, they can pursue a reason to complain about it. We should enforce a fair and consistent code and allow an individual to report if they are directly affected by their neighbor's failure to follow that code. Number 3, create an allowance for an appeal process during which time the home could still be rented. Due process must be a part of this legislation. The failure to allow this will result in numerous unnecessary lawsuits from both homeowners and guests that will only burden the town. Number 4, owners should not be held liable for their guests' behavior. Guests who park illegally should be penalized, and guests who are loud will be asked to leave by the owner if they do not quiet down. Lake Placid can lead the region not only by maintaining the amenities of a great destination vacation, but also as a model host to our athletes and guests who wish to enjoy both hotels and homestays, as this town has done for so many generations. Thank you.
Next up, Laurel Michaels, followed by Alan Miner.
All minor bill passed.
Next after Laurel will be Margaret Kirsten.
Hi, Laurel Michaels, 331 Whiteface Inn Lane. Although not year-round residents, my family has been part of the Lake Placid community for most of my life. We have volunteered in Lake Placid, trained, competed, and taught winter sports in Lake Placid, supported Lake Placid businesses, and paid Lake Placid taxes for 40 years. We rent our one property in Lake Placid as a short-term rental, and this is only to cover costs so that we can keep it in the family. As you know, a significant part of the Lake Placid economy depends on tourists. Tourists more and more want a vacation experience that short-term rentals provide. This is not my opinion. It's a fact proven by the huge growth of companies like VRBO and Airbnb. The bottom line is that many tourists want short-term rentals rather than hotels. Short-term rentals put over the $32 million a year into the Lake Placid economy. This money goes to contractors, restaurant owners, employees, cleaners, landscapers, retail establishments, attractions, and on and on. Short-term rentals, through the taxes they pay, also contribute to funding the Lake Placid schools, the fire and police departments, and other services. So here's the problem. The currently proposed short-term rental regulations are so extreme that they threaten to cripple short-term rentals. What will this mean to the local people? Well, first, let's talk about the reduction of $32 million going into local business. Hey, travelers are fickle. If they can't find a short-term rental in Lake Placid, well, they'll use VRBO and Airbnb to find somewhere else for their family and friends to meet. Reduction of tax money going to the schools, police, fire, and so on. If current short-term rental owners can't sell their properties due to the extreme proposed limitations, and note that some of this has already happened, their property values will go down, and so will their taxes. When their taxes go down, that means less money going to Lake Placid schools, police, fire, and so on. I really don't think anyone wants this outcome. So how can we fix it? This is what I suggest. We set aside the current proposed legislation in favor of a plan where the town and village boards cooperatively work together with stakeholders, including short-term rental owners and local businesses, to create a set of guidelines that is fair to all involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Margaret Kirstein, followed by Raymond Halbasek.
Hello, I'm Margaret Kirstein, and my home is at 3 Hemlock Way. As a homeowner who rents out our small home on a short-term basis, we are part of Lake Placid and concerned about housing affordability in this town. We'd like to have a productive exchange and process with the town board about how to help address this issue based on current information, since there is speculation that STRs negatively affect affordable housing units. As far as we know, the last time a comprehensive study of affordable housing in the Tri-Lakes area was completed was in 2008. In that study, the causes of affordable housing shortage were unrelated to short-term rentals. Certainly, all the problems identified in that study predate the upward trend in short-term rentals. Currently, the Community Development Commission has $20,000 to conduct a 3-month study. It will look at what income range the committee should focus on serving, what housing stock is currently available to people who fall within the income range, what would be considered affordable housing for the residents of this area, and potential gaps in the housing market. Quote, "In order to determine these, we need more facts," Dean Dietrich said. The study is to start in October. He didn't say this, but the study is to start in October 2019. The village and town's proposed short-term rental regulations are still in draft form, and while the board has improved these proposed regulations, more work needs to be done on them. Most importantly, they need to be informed by current and relevant data that this upcoming study will provide. I attended also the July 2019 board meeting where the Community Development Committee presented this information about their wanting to start a study, and in late July we're going to be putting out to bid who is going to be doing this as independent investigator, and with the study to start in October. And I would suggest that the town wait to see, because there's a confluence of many things. One is affordable housing, the short-term rental regulations and how they impact on the town, and also how affordable housing, how it can be highlighted, and to get more data before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Raymond Halbasek, followed by Karen Huppinger.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm new to this issue. I spoke up at the last meeting in June. I live at 30 Cayuga Way in Lake Placid. I am a clinical psychologist, and I am very concerned about quality of life. That is my number one issue. I see the school enrollments in our public school declining severely. I see housing costs increasing. Taxes have risen to a point where many people tell me they can't afford to live here. People that run businesses in this area say they can't get workers to come to work here because they can't buy a house. Rentals are very, very expensive. I think we have serious problems. We have a vape shop down the street. What does that tell me? Kids are going into the vape shop. Why doesn't this board stop the vape shop? We need to recognize that the quality of life in Lake Placid is not what it was when I moved here. I moved here in 1985, or I built my first house here in 1985, about 35 years ago, and I loved the sense of our beautiful community. I loved the closeness. We had kids all around my house, running they'd walk into my house, they'd go out of my house. Now there are 2 kids within 300 feet of my house. The census in the public school has dropped. We've got drugs all over the place. We've got alcohol problems. I don't like the direction that the community is moving in, and it is my belief that the short-term rental situation is not helping. No one in this law that I just read does not propose getting rid of short-term rentals. It does propose some sensible regulations, which I like. Okay? We will always have the short-term rentals. However, there needs to be some sense brought to this problem. One issue that I didn't see, and I read it very quickly, is there's no cap on the number of bed and breakfasts and short-term rentals that we have. I understand there's 365 now in our neighborhood, that's within our community. That's a lot. The more money that goes into them, the higher the values go, the higher the taxes go, and then affordability goes out the window. We have a very big problem. I think we really need not a moratorium on this law. We certainly need to have this law kept in place. We may need to talk about some improvements to the law that exists at this particular point. But I can tell you, as a clinical psychologist that works in our community, 90% of the clients I see are from the North Country. It's not going in a good direction, folks, when you have 15 and 14-year-old kids using drugs and vaping and all the mental health problems that are associated with it. So thank you for listening to me. I hope that we can reach a sensible conclusion.
My name's Karen Hudlinger. I live at 23 Marcy Road. My husband and I have lived there for 24 years this fall. When we sit on our front porch, we can see 9 houses. 3 of them are lived in full time. I've enjoyed hearing people tug at the heartstrings of, gee, they like to come up as a family and they like to come up as a bridal party, and I've got no complaints with that. I do think that we need to cap the number of people, just like we try to control the number of people with other things, to, maybe only 12 bridal parties this weekend and, whatnot. I think we have too many short-term rentals. I was on the fence about this regulation, but now having heard so many short-term rental owners whine about it, I think it's probably a really good idea. If housing prices are going to go down because people who invested in these homes not to live in them, but to make money out of them, that's a good thing because it means that our families can afford to live in them again. Okay? Now, I hear a lot of people say that, oh, it's not legal, we can't cap this, we can't cap that, like George did it. And I think that if we really had the will, we could come up with something that would control the spread of this. I'd just like to remind the learned gentleman here that most of the short-term rental people don't vote in the village and the town. We do. So just to conclude, I would like to say to the short-term rental owners, you guys think that you have the legal right to do this? Maybe, but you don't have the moral right. Thank you.
Followed by Richard Lundy.
I'm Richard Lundy. I'll send my time back to the board. My name is John Hopkinson. I live at 79 Adirondack Lodge Road in Lake Placid. I'm here tonight primarily as the chairman of the Lake Placid North Elba Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm uncomfortable about the positive-negative impact onto the ZBA of Part 2, Section 11.2, Item F7 of the proposed law, which indicates that our group will have responsibility to adjudicate appeals of decisions of the enforcement officer of penalties for alleged violations. Up to now, virtually all of our cases that come before us are what are called area variances. The determination process for these cases is prescribed by New York state law, and our decisions are usually made in a very straightforward and rapid manner. This is not so the case with interpretations or appeals, as they're so-called, which admittedly have been rare up to now. These become much more like court cases. There's usually a plaintiff, a defendant, lawyers, each one of which presenting their case. There is evidence presented, there are documents recorded, the code enforcement officer has to mark as evidence physical documents that are presented, and the ZBA council has to develop a legal findings of fact. Not surprisingly, the few interpretation cases that we've handled recently have taken many, many months to resolve. I'm concerned that the ZBA is currently configured and oriented may not have the capacity and/or the expertise to handle what would likely become a much more heavier docket of novel cases. This is because cited rental unit owners have considerable incentive and negligible downside to appeal the penalties imposed by the enforcement officer. I'm okay for now to take a wait-and-see approach on this potential issue, possibly for a year or so.
30 seconds.
However, I would ask the town and village boards to make a firm commitment very soon to revisit this matter in a specified near-term later date, and then to modify the law as required. Thank you very much for listening.
Mr. Levy, did I understand you're passing on speaking?
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Don Scammell. He will be followed by Zay Curtis.
Good evening. My name is Don Scammell. My wife and I live at 272 Bear Cub Lane, as we have for 40 years. My wife's a native. I moved up here in 1969. And boy, has this place changed. I commend the board for doing this. It's in the right direction, but I don't think it's strong enough yet. I do believe there should be a cap, if not a moratorium. I also think there should be a cap on the number of days that any STR can be rented in a given year. I also think that this zoning board fellow touched upon a lot of issues, and where is the zoning board going to say when businesses are done in a residential area? How is that going to be taxed? We walk down Main Street now, we used to know everybody. Now we know nobody, because all of us don't want to go in the streets. So we need a cap, if not a moratorium. And if these STR people think that they're the cause of our tourism, they just don't read the newspaper.
Next up, Zay Curtis, followed by Trish Friedlander.
is Zay Curtis. I live at 328 West Valley Road. You know, it's nice to stand here and hear all the people with rental properties talk about the economic impact on Lake Placid, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't help me when I'm awakened at 2:30 in the morning for people partying on the back deck on the house behind me on Essex Street. I have called the Lake Placid Police 5 times since rugby came because of being wakened up in the middle of the night out of a sound sleep. And I think, as I think about it, and I've been to talk to the police department, they've done an excellent job. They always come, they always get them to quiet down. It happens pretty quickly. But 2 days later, there's a different tenant, and we have to repeat the thing all over again. And so I think this law, and if it's in there, I don't see it. It refers in the enforcement side to referring to local and town law, but I don't see a trigger anywhere which says, at what point do I get to stop calling the police in the middle of the night and that rental property gets permanently handled? I shouldn't have to sue to have that happen. It should happen automatically after a certain number of calls or a certain number of complaints. And I think that's all I really have to say, and I hope the board will take a listen. It's fun watching these guys because I used to sit on that board. But, I really hope that we look at the trigger. We look at what point are enough complaints enough to cause government to take action without me having to spend the money and file a lawsuit. I mean, it's ridiculous, and that's what we need to solve. That's it, thanks.
Next up, Trish Friedlander, followed by Karen Armstrong and family.
My name is Trish Friedlander, and I'm a local resident who was born and raised in Lake Placid. I live here 12 months a year. I've chosen to come back with my children to raise them in the community that I call my home. I have a room in my home that I rent on Airbnb. My intent tonight is to ask the board to enforce the current land use code. All of the complaints, including parties, noise, parking, and etc., although important, are secondary to the fact that the current land use code is not being enforced. The North Elba Land Use Code states single-family and two-family residential uses are the only permitted uses in my district. To simplify, businesses or lodges are not allowed, as per the land use code, to operate in residential neighborhoods, period. This is what is happening in our community. Predatory, yes, predatory investors are buying up homes in residential areas and using these homes to make money at the cost of driving our locals out. Locals out of our neighborhoods. They're destroying our neighborhoods and burdening our resources. We have residential zoning for a reason, and that is to preserve and protect residential areas from commercial development. If you have residential neighborhoods, you have people who live here, work here, and care about the community. I am proud of this town and welcome others to visit and stay and become the people in our neighborhoods who sponsor sporting teams, hold fundraisers for sick community members, volunteer for our fire department, and give back to our town. At a meeting earlier this year, the board was awaiting the result of a lawsuit between Northwood School and the Joint Zoning Board of Appeals for our town and the village regarding a large house being used as a student dorm and its allowance in a residential neighborhood. Northwood School lost that lawsuit. The report points to the relative lack of permanence in the groups of persons who would be in residence, and further states the feeling of the property is more akin to a boarding house, a group home, or dormitory than a single-family dwelling. This lack of permanence is what the absentee owner vacation rentals have. These short-term rentals in residential zones are masquerading as residences, but are really lodges or even hotels. They are in violation of the land use code that was upheld by the New York State Supreme Court in the Northwood case. I am asking you to enforce the land use code that is already in place that does not allow these absentee owner vacation rentals to operate in residential areas. I want to thank the board for your consideration, in particular Jason Leon for representing our neighborhood.
Next up, Karen Armstrong and family, and then Ann O'Leary.
Oh, okay, yes, we just gained one. Hi, I'm Karen Armstrong. I live at 61 Acorn Street, and that is my only address. This is my family.
Hi, I'm Gabby Armstrong. I also live at 61 Acorn Street. We cannot adopt this proposal. We have land use codes to preserve residential areas for a reason. If we adopt this proposal, we will no longer have residential areas, full stop. Do not be sidetracked by those business interests and predatory investors telling us that STVRs are what our community needs. They are not. We should not continue to subsidize these businesses masquerading as residential homes and apartments as they are inflating property values, overusing services, and not paying their fair share in commercial rates or taxes. They tell us that they are operating these businesses because it's good for us. We know this is not the case. This is good for their pocketbooks, and we are subsidizing them by not labeling them for what they really are. Businesses. If we preserve our residential areas as code, as is the intent of our current land use code, those who work here might be able to live here. And those who live here will patronize our shops, send their children to our schools, attend our houses of worship, volunteer for local organizations, and help to welcome all the wonderful tourists that visit this beautiful place. For those of you who have purchased property in our residential neighborhoods, we welcome you as full-time or part-time residents. We also welcome your business investments in our commercially zoned areas. In closing, to the members of our boards elected by us to represent us, we cannot adopt this proposal. Please draft quickly language that will bolster our current land use code to preserve areas for residents to affordably live, as has always been the intent of our code. Finally, we would like to acknowledge the efforts of trustee Jason Leon in advocating on behalf of the average resident. Thank you.
Next up, Ann O'Leary, followed by Mary Jo Venturi.
Wow. Hi, I'm Ann O'Leary, live on North Snell Way. This is my 30th year here, starting this week. I live here year-round. I live in the South Lake District, which is the most heavily regulated district in Lake Placid. It's over across from the Northwood School. And it's most heavily regulated regarding code. We recently won a decision that Trish was speaking about. It went to the Supreme Court of the state of New York. And it was regarding a home behind me near my property that was owned by the Northwood School. And they wanted it to make it into a dorm, but code held. And the courts deemed that a dorm was not in line with the definition of a single-family residence. If this doesn't fall in line, which the children were there at least 9 months, if this doesn't fall into line, how can a weekly turnover of people be in compliance? Property next to me is owned by a couple who own 8 to 10 properties, and they advertise for up to 22 people staying there. The home on the tax records is paying tax on a 3,100 square foot home with 3 bedrooms, but they advertise a 5,500 square foot home and can sleep up to 22. I happen to know that 2 of those bedrooms have no egress. They are in the basement, they're built into a berm, so they're not even safe. This is clearly a business because if they own 8 to 10 properties with up to 22 people, they're housing up to 180 people a week potentially. These owners have never spent a night in this home to my knowledge. So in my view, the addition of regulations, they're irrelevant to many of the districts in this town. How can you permit something that is inherently in violation of code is what I would say. And I guess my other question to the good people sitting here, is our entire code being modified, or is this just a singular action? Because if the entire code is being modified, this is a much larger discussion with really incalculable consequences. Thank you for your time.
followed by Brian Marshall.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Jo Venturi, and my home is at 50 Interlaken Avenue. Over the last 70 years, we have owned our property. It's 124 years old, and we've owned it since 1949. My parents' great delight was sharing our seasonal home with others. I would say that approximately 45 out of the 70 years, we have rented our house as what is now called a short-term rental. In addition to their desire to share, it also became a necessary endeavor to help raise income for the 3 taxes due to the village, school, and town, whether you are full-time or part-time resident. Luckily, we were able to help the local economy by bringing so many people and families to the area over so many years. We always rented through the local realtors and met the necessary requirements outlined in the contracts they signed. I now have continued this endeavor. I have followed my predecessor's rules of the house, added some of my own. Before I accept a rental, I require background on each person who will be staying. My utilities are in order. I have alarms and fire extinguishers. I put the parking on my lawn if necessary, and I am always there to meet, greet, and get a sense about my guests, do a walkthrough with them, leave my contact information as well as that of the local police and fire departments, and I check in by phone or email throughout their stay. Why then am I being penalized by this proposed law and forced to pay thousands of dollars for a permit? And why are these proposed permit fees so high? What are they based on? Or are the amounts purposefully so high as to make it impossible to rent any longer? I'm very sorry to hear about friends and residents who are being affected by the abuse of the renters and tenants, leading to overcrowding neighborhoods, parking spots, out-of-line conduct. But it is the online sites that need to have knowledge of and enforce the rules and work with our town officials to secure that the listed properties are in order, they are guarding against the abuse of the system so that everyone is protected. It is the job of the renters to know who your tenants are, to verify the number of tenants coming. I have not had one problem in 35 rentals. As a law-abiding citizen and taxpayer, I feel I have the right to share my property with others. However, I may never be able to afford the permit fee to continue my dreams and that of my family. Thank you so much.
Next up, Brian Marshall, followed by Jennifer Newhart.
Hi, my name is Brian Marshall. I live at 363 Adirondack Lodge Road, and we have a vacation rental on a commercial property on Saranac Ave. It's a very large house. Our average bedroom size are 300 to 365 square foot. It's a large, large house. Most of our clients are family reunions, people coming together from all different states coming to stay here. We have adequate parking. We can have easily 10 cars without even looking crowded in there. We're on the property every single day. We have the Boots and Brady's miniature golf course on there. We're always on the property. It is a commercial property, and I'm just feeling that perhaps because of the size, we're limited now, regulations of how many people we can have in the house. We're not trying to give huge monster parties and everything. We're there when anything does get out of hand. And we've had some tough times, but we're right there, and within minutes, we're on the property, and it is stopped. So we're there full time. But I think that in this particular case, since it's a large house, there should be a way or a means for us to work with the zoning and having maybe a Board of Appeals or a variance where you would go and you would say, these rooms are extra large, they're the size, they're 4 times larger than the 70 square feet that you have to have. There should be a way that in a circumstance where we exceed the square footage, we're totally commercial, have a parking lot, there's no neighborhoods around there, I think what we're doing is a great job. I just think there are a few things that we'll have to tweak over the years to add. And in our case, we vary from a lot of, we're not in a neighborhood. I feel sorry for a lot of our neighborhoods up here. I know the problem that our town has, but in a commercial, the Airbnbs are the way of the future. People are booking it all over. We have to address this, and we have a piece of property that is ideal for it. We are in control, and I just think there should be a way that, we can say, well, our rooms are 4 times the size of a normal room there, that we could, have more people in there. Because there is a need for the family reunions that like to come together from all different states and meet in Lake Placid, which is most of our rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jennifer Newhart, followed by Annie Estito.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Newhart. I live at 36 Oneida in Lake Placid. We've lived here for 35 years. It is our only home. What I'd like to start off with is the fear-mongering attitude that was placed, the ad here that was placed, as if, as several people have already mentioned, that the only reason that Lake Placid is successful is because of the Airbnbs. We have been successful for years and years. We do not need that to make us successful. The other thing I'd like to say is that people who have been coming up have been talking about themselves as businesses. They are. They need to be taxed as businesses. That's where this is going. Third thing, residence. It's our home. It's our residence. It's not a commercial property. I understand what the marshals are saying. They're in a commercial place. Have a business in a commercial place. Do not have a business in our home. That's what you're doing. Point 3. It's really funny that if you have 3 commercial or 3 Airbnbs in a row, and the middle one happens to be the one having the noise, that nobody can report it because there's nobody abutting them that is an actual resident. Final. A lot of the contractors, a lot of the caretakers, a lot of the people that are supporting, taking care of these properties, they can't live here. They can't go here. Remember who does. Thank you.
Next up, Annie Estito, followed by Debbie Josephson.
Good evening. I'm not a Lake Placid resident. I live in a neighboring area. However, I am an Airbnb host. It is my single residence, and I want to just take a minute to point out that, and I haven't heard this from any of you, you guys are in a different situation here with a large area with a lot of people coming in here, but to the rest of us in the North Country who are struggling to make a living out here, and my specific situations with a 3-year-old and a cancer patient for my husband, being able to rent my house was the difference between being homeless and feeding my family and keeping us housed. So although this is a slightly different scenario, I think when you think about how you're going to apply these things or cap things and limit things, I never expected to be in this situation. I never expected to need to rent out 75% of my home so that my family could stay there and live. So I think you need to consider when you talk about these cappings, moratoriums, and all these things, that somebody in here could end up in my situation and you will be homeless too if you can't keep your home because you don't have the right to do with it what you need to do. And I just want to let you think about that for a minute. Thank you.
Next up, Debbie Josephson, followed by Kevin Fountain.
Hi, everybody. First, I want to address the boards, and thank you very much for all of the hard work that you and Town Council have put into these regulations and all of the effort that you have gone to try to reconcile what is clearly a very, very difficult divide. I was going to tell you about being a local, because I am a local. I grew up here listening to WNBC, listening to the J&K show and Swap Shop, and it was a great place to grow up. It's also a wonderful place to be as a grown-up. And when my family moved away decades ago, I continued to come here. And we used to stay, I would come with friends and other family, and we'd stay in Saranac Lake because we couldn't afford the hotels in Lake Placid. But we'd come here because Lake Placid is Lake Placid. So it was in 2000 that my spouse and I first rented a in-house vacation rental. And we discovered that, oh my gosh, we can do this and we can bring our friends here and family, and we can have continued to do that year after year after year. And those people have continued to come and rent vacation rentals. And in 2007, my spouse and I actually sold our primary home to be able to try to extract some money to be able to buy a place here. And fortunately, we were able to do that. Since then, we have used it, our friends have used it, family have used it, and we have rented it out to guests. And our guests love it. We've had no complaints from our neighbors. Our neighbors tell us that they like our guests. Our guests love our neighbors. I know it sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe Pollyanna-ish, but it's worked for us, and we would not be able to have our home here, which we hope to be in full-time at some point, because we couldn't, if we had somebody living in it all the time, we wouldn't be able to use it. If we only are here when we can be, then it's empty, and in the winter, you do not want an empty home here. So what I would like to wrap up, and thank you, in my little 30 seconds is to say that the board has worked very hard. Let's all take a breath here. We are blessed to be in a position where most people involved in this process have strong connections, sincere commitments to, and deep affection for this area. Let's all work together. If there's any place that has in its DNA the ability to work together and have hospitable environment, it's Lake Placid.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin Fountain, followed by Bernie. Thank you. So after Kevin will be Leslie Walsh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Fountain. I live at 35 Taylor Way. I was born in Lake Placid, New York. Actually in Lake Placid, not Saranac Lake. In a house on Forest Street, now called Acorn Street, and the house is torn down because I guess somebody wants to expunge me from the history of Lake Placid. I want to thank the boards for what they've done and the work they put in. I think the law is, in a lot of ways, most ways, is a good law. I think that not allowing people to park in the garage seems a little strange, but you know, I can live with that. There's one section which I think is objectionable, and that's number 11.4. I think jail time for violation of short-term rentals local code is not right. The article of the local law is written as an invitation to arbitrary and capricious enforcement. There are no legal restraints upon those enforcing the law, no trial, no jury, no defense. Responsibility is unclear. If I have a contract via Merrill L. Thomas, because I don't use any internet services, for a rental, and the contract specifies that only 4 cars are allowed to park. But unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst to Merrill L. Thomas, the renter's uncle shows up and parks a 5th car, well, who goes to jail? Me, because I'm the owner of the property, or Merrill L. Thomas for assisting in the violation, or the renter, or the renter's uncle? And this is for a first offense. Nobody that should be sent to jail for an offense of this sort. The punishment is extreme, unusual, and excessive for the crime, and I think this 11.4 should be deleted from what is otherwise a pretty good attempt and the result of a lot of hard work and hard thinking by very capable people in our local government. There are a lot of people who think that everything was pristine in Lake Placid. It was good. I'm glad I was born here and glad I grew up here, but it sure as heck was not pristine. We had to struggle all the time because it's not vacation rentals which have changed the character of the town. It's the fact that people leave the town, like I did. I came back, but I had to leave. And families don't move here for the same reason. It's the same reason. There are no jobs.
30 seconds.
And I am putting my mouth where my money is, money where my mouth is, and pledging right now that I will work, give my time and my money to the boards. If they have an idea, I drew up plans for a multi-story car park on Main Street. I tried to get people to come into the Health Science Center. Anything, anybody with a workable idea that will
Thank you very
bring
much.
benefit, create jobs for the community has my support.
Next up, Leslie Walsh, followed by Jessica Kelly.
My name is Leslie Walsh. I live at 39 Jersey Drive. 15 years ago, I inherited a family home. And my first time to Lake Placid was in '62 when I would come up here to visit family. And it was a bittersweet thing that I ended up inheriting this home. But my husband and I have been coming up here now and living here part-time during the year. While I live here, I've been doing Airbnb for the last 9 years. I rent out spare rooms in my house. I greet my guests. I am their concierge. I am the one that changes the toilet paper. I am the one that gives them a list of things to do and restaurants to go to. And I would not be able to keep this family home, as you had said, unless I was able to take these spare rooms and generate some income to be able to pay the taxes for the school, the town taxes, and I have never had an issue. Most of the people that come to my home are in bed at 10 o'clock, like I'm in bed at 10 o'clock. And I know there is a problem where people are coming in and building these homes that house 20 people, and a manager is 20 miles away, and I believe there is an issue, but I would hope that the board would recognize that there's also a different side to this coin, and there are people that do rely on being able to home share. And I hope that as you put these regulations in place and these license fees, that you look at it a little differently when a person is truly just trying to maintain something that's been in their family. Thank you.
Next up, Jessica Kelly, followed by Melissa Fernia.
Well, there's a lot of people here. I'm in the front row where there were seats, but my name is Jessica Nugent Kelly. I say Nugent Kelly because I am a native of Lake Placid, one of the very few. I think I'm a 4th or 5th generation native, but I was born in Saranac Lake, not Lake Placid. So I just want to start with, first of all, thanking both of the boards, everybody who put all of the work into this, because I know it takes countless hours and commitment, so thank you. And community members, so thank you. So I live on 42 Cherry Street. That you haven't heard yet, because that's one of those homes that needed a lot of work. My husband and I just bought it on July 3rd and had to put our whole heart and soul into gutting the entire thing, and are still trying to figure out how to afford it. I'm a teacher here,
and I came back to the area. I say I left for a couple of years because I got a teaching job in the Thousand Islands. And I came back to raise my child here because this town is magic. It always has been. And long before short-term rentals, my grandfather, there were rentals. And that's okay because we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us because there is tourism here and we love the people that come here, but we also love our community. In about 1997, my grandpa Sal, who was the lone cobbler left in Lake Placid, and I were standing on the sidewalk of the cobbler shop and we were talking about the economy for some reason. I was like 16, so I don't know why, but we were talking about it. And he said, mark my words, the way the economy is going, we're headed for another recession. And the way things are going in this place, this town, it's gonna be a ghost town for locals. Well, wouldn't you know, the man was right. And bless his soul, he's spot on about Lake Placid becoming a ghost town for locals. As I'm very aware that the board has put a lot of hard work into this, we need to have some sort of resolution as far as the amount of rentals. I don't think there shouldn't be rentals. We understand that tourism brings economy to our town and we appreciate it, but there needs to be some sort of cap. So I guess on record, my questions to the board and thoughts to the board are, what are motivating factors that would compel the board to think about a cap or a moratorium or place that in the regulations? Also, if not that, then what other avenues will the board explore in order to address the zoning strain on, the strain on resources, both natural and employment with the town, village, electricity, police department, water departments? And lastly, the sustainability of our community is our gold medal.
Next up, Melissa Fernley, followed by Dave Jones.
Hi, guys. I knew I should have worn my boots for this. It's getting pretty deep in here. So I'm Melissa Fernier. I am a true local, just like Jess. I'm 4th generation. I am an EMT for ORDA, so I take care of those pesky athletes who are ruining our business here. Such a crap. My mom told me I can't swear and I can't get arrested because she's not coming back out, so I'm gonna try really hard to not do that. I'm pretty ticked off right now. So here's the deal. I am a volunteer, one of the only volunteer EMTs in this town. I got an award for saving a guy. You know why? Because I was the only one that showed up. Because the main crew was out on a call, and it was up to a backup, extra person who just happened to have her pager on. And I, by the grace of God, got to this guy who was having a cardiac arrest, and I brought him back. That's not gonna ever happen again, you know why? Because I foolishly wanted to buy a house in my home, my hometown where I grew up, and because of these gold leaf people where I stand up proud now, I can't afford a house. Not even close, because I'm the small minority, actually the bigger minority that only makes, less than $50,000. I live in a trailer at Cascade Acres. I'm not fancy pants like the rest of you who get to live up at Lake Placid Lodge and the club and all you fancy pants. I'm a trailer girl, right? So I wanted to get a house. What a stupid idea. Think I could afford it here? Hell no. So I have to buy a house. I signed my papers on Thursday out of this town, which means that Lake Placid has lost their only volunteer. So you gold leaf people who think that you're so fancy at bringing us money, well, you just lost yourself an EMT, and most of the locals, who by the way are the ones who are going to be cleaning the bottoms of your fancy people and cooking their food and cleaning their toilets. But hey, what the hell do I know?
Thank you. Next up, Dave Jones, followed by Brian King.
Hi, Dave Jones.
I live at 114 Greenwood Street. I've lived on Greenwood Street since 1951, give or take a few years when I lived elsewhere in town. It's the coolest neighborhood in Lake Placid, where I grew up. And now it's downtown Lake Placid. I implore you guys, I know every one of you guys over here. I have a personal relationship with you, please. This is a start. It's not the best law, but it is a start. Please pass this law. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Brian Quinn, followed by Michael Tekach.
Hello, I'm Brian Quinn. I live at 331 Whiteface Inn Lane. I have to apologize in advance. I had notes made for this, but as the evening's gone on, I've been like changing it all and don't want to have to repeat a lot of other people's comments. One thing I'd like to make clear is, as a Yankee fan, I really don't understand why the Red Sox have to exist. Sorry, challenge that one. You know, my wife and I, we are not locals, but we are aspiring to be locals here. We looked all over the country for a place to invest in with the idea of then moving. And right now we're probably 50-50 residents down in the Philadelphia area and up here. You know, we're also, I don't know, Gold Leaf or Gold whatever. We started a special education business out of the basement of our home. We worked hard. We dedicated ourselves, and we managed to make enough money to be able to buy a place up here like this. It's a condo over in Whiteface Inn Lane. I also empathize with the fact that we rent it a few times a year, and there's people who have other rentals in units in the complex who are full-time renters, and they're not as sensitive to what's going on. For us, it's our home. Just like for you as locals, it's your home too. As far as the feel for this, I feel like back when I was in a college town, and I tend to make a lot of friends on all sides of the fence, and I got to know the locals there too, and the locals there had the same thing, and sadly, the truth of the matter, they were like, I hate this college, they drive me nuts, but the bottom line is, you take that college out, that town would be dead. This town is not the same as it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The Olympics are sadly, I wish they were, but they're not coming back. Not to a small community like this. So we have to work with where we're at. And the vacation community is a vibrant part of it. My quick point, because I don't want to repeat a lot of other things, is I'm concerned with even the enforcement elements of this. I'd hate to be the code enforcement officer if he's out here, he's got to be sweating bullets. Because even rolling this out, if this were triggered tomorrow, there's no way you can manage this. This would be an absolute rollout nightmare. There's issues like, myself and I were talks about, apparently the rules don't quite exactly apply if you're a local versus not. Discrimination issues, what if you're half here, half there? So I can't go through everything, but time frames to roll this out, I think there's a lot of problems with that. So I would still say, hold off, make sure you get this right if you're gonna roll it out. And also, for those who are builders in town, there's gotta be money in affordable housing. I wish I was a builder right now. I'm hearing it, I'm going niche market. Somebody jump in it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Michael Tekach, followed by Chris Lawrence.
Good evening, Michael Takach from the Stagecoach Inn. I just want to start by saying we're in real favor of regulations on STRs, even though our property doesn't fall under the guidelines because we're bed and breakfast. So just want to say that we're kind of neutral voice here. Our property is going to continue to rent as it always has for over 200 years because we're exempted under these regulations as they're proposed now. You know, it seems like there's a real divide here in town, which makes me really sad because I've worked for the past 35 years of my life to get to Lake Placid because I came here when I was a small child and always wanted to come back. I worked really hard in the workforce for 20 years to be able to afford to move here. And I wish everything was more affordable here. The reality is that Lake Placid is what it is because it has a strong tourist-driven economy. To have a strong tourist-driven economy, you need to have modern-based pricing of real estate. We can't be in the 1950s on real estate price and expect people to come here and visit and spend their money. And that's a reality that is just sad. I wish it wasn't the case. With that being said, Lake Placid is still somewhat affordable when compared with other resort communities and areas that are just like Lake Placid. Our available rental apartments are actually cheaper than almost every other resort community in this state and other states. At $50,000 of median income, there are houses currently on the for sale market that fall within the HUD-approved affordable housing range. And I feel bad for anybody that can't take advantage of that due to their work situation or whatever. But I think it's unfair for people who are very proud to be locals, which I desperately want to be able to call myself a local. I live here full time, but it seems like the tenant in the room here is that I'm not a local because I haven't been here for 40 years because my parents didn't grant me the fortune of living here when I was born. But what all that means is that Lake Placid is not being degraded in any way by STRs. There's no evidence to that. If STRs are a problem because your next door neighbor has an STR, I feel for you. There are bad STR owners and there are good ones. And if they don't keep track of their people, that's unfortunate for the people next door. But of the larger issue of STRs somehow creating a bad real estate market that doesn't allow locals to stay here, that's just bogus. We have always historically had 2 houses per resident in Lake Placid. At maximum population in 1940, we had 3,100 residents here, and at that time we had just shy of 6,000 homes. Okay, so there's always been vacant homes. Those vacant homes have been used as STRs. I own the oldest one in town. Lake Placid Stagecoach Inn was built and started as an STR in the early 1800s. So I just want to leave you with the fact that STRs have not caused any of the financial strain that some of you are feeling here. I wish we didn't have financial strain. We do, but I don't think it's fair to blame STRs exclusively. Thank you.
Next up, Chris Lawrence, followed by Debbie Aronstone.
Good evening, my name is Chris Lawrence. I'm a representative of the Gold Medal Hospitality Group. I also would like to thank the board for their hard work and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First and foremost, just a response. The numbers that were put in the paper and the boards over there, they weren't meant to insult anybody or offend anybody, and if so, we apologize for that. They were simply meant to point out true facts on economic impact that the STRs, and quite frankly, they're just air DNA numbers supported by your organization here in the community, Roost. We are just reporting what was printed out a couple months ago so that they're common knowledge. Heard many facts tonight about affordable housing, comments about it, problems with STRs, the sense of community, and the reality is as Michael just stated, vacation rentals in your community has been here for decades, even 100, 150 years. That's what Lake Placid is known for. Go back to your wealthy people from New York City forever. They've rented, they've come up, vacation rentals. I'm sorry to hear about your sense of community is changing. I lived in Watertown and Carthage for 30 years. And we went through the same thing when Fort Drum was going to expand. Fort Drum's going to ruin our community, going to ruin our sense of community, ruining our schools. The gentleman who talked about vaping, STR is the cause of vaping. Give me a break, okay? And I'm not insulting you, sir, but I mean, that's just today's society. It has nothing to do with it. Fort Drum was going to do the same to Carthage and Watertown. This is the world we live in today. Communities change. I apologize. But the STRs, that's driven by demand. These numbers are increasing because that's what consumers want. There's a definition out there called the new consumer. The new consumer wants large group gatherings. They want homes. They want to spend in authentic versus standardized home or settings. So that means homes versus hotels. They want unique experiences. They want genuine experiences. They want local experiences. With all that said, People are not gonna change their habits if you restrict too far. They're gonna find vacation rentals elsewhere. They're gonna go to Killington. They're gonna go to Lake George. You mentioned Lake George changed it. They repealed their restrictions 5 days after they implemented the restrictions because the business owners revolted. I ask you to consider this. If you have these issues too strict,
Time is up.
you'll be in trouble. Thank you.
Next up will be Erin Stone, followed by Heidi Brogan.
Hi, I'm Debbie Arnstone. I live at 33 Adirondack Lodge Road. Sorry, I'm really nervous. We also have a business at 7 Old Military Road. We make prosthetics. We also do have an Airbnb that we rent out on the weekends above our business. And, you know, I really just wanted to come up here and say, when I first got here today, and say thank you, and I do not envy the task that you guys have in front of you. Everybody sitting at this table, we clearly have an affordable housing issue in town. You know, clearly there's issues that need to be addressed here, and you are working your tails off. So thank you. But what the gentleman who spoke in advance of me really prompted some thoughts on what I wanted to say, though, is he kept on driving home what the consumer wants and what the business needs to give it. And that brings us right back to Trish's point, is my Airbnb is a business. And, you know, if businesses are having in a residential area, like all businesses have rules that they need to follow to keep them safe, to make sure that they're operating. A food service business has to comply with health department regulations to make sure it's safe. If these are businesses operating in residential communities, we need to do something about it. And so I really agree with a lot of what Trish was saying about, you know, if it's a neighborhood, it's a neighborhood. It's not business zoning. But I do applaud, like, this first step here. That's a really great first step. Clearly, we need to keep working on affordable housing in our community, both related to this and related to the other things. But this is a great start for the health and safety of the people coming here. I think that was about it, so thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Heidi Brogan, followed by Ricky Lowndes.
My name is Heidi Rowland, and I live at 127 Hillcrest. My husband, Peter Rowland, and I have lived on Hillcrest Avenue since 1984. Our neighborhood is the poster child of short-term vacation rental issues that are being addressed today. The regulations for vacation rentals as proposed are a first step in managing these issues in the town and village. The permitting process will provide an inventory and ensure the compliance with health and safety standards, as well as the off-street parking regulations and noise issues. A distinction must be made between owner-occupied rentals and the absentee owners running de facto businesses in residential areas where commercial activities are not permitted. The land use code, so the next and even more important step is to decide how this will all be managed and where vacation rentals will be permitted. The land use code adopted in 2011 states that in village and town residential districts, permitted uses are single and two-family dwellings. All other uses are conditional uses requiring review and approval by the Joint Review Board. The problem with short-term vacation rentals is, one of the problems, is that they are not clearly defined in the definition section of the land use code, but would seem to be addressed closest by the definitions of bed, breakfast, multifamily residential, or room and boarding house, all considered conditional use, therefore subject for review. Many vacation rentals are de facto businesses operating in residential areas, as opposed to commercial districts, and as such would be conditional uses subject to review for their potential impacts. Vacation rentals must be defined to be regulated. The proposed local law is a step in that direction. However, We are extremely concerned that by issuing a permit for use that is not defined and would certainly appear to be a conditional use in the residential districts, will legitimize these uses prior to the consideration of their appropriateness in the residential districts. Beyond the issues of parking and vacation rentals have driven up the assessments of houses in residential areas, making them unaffordable for local people. The owners that have been and continuing to flip houses use rental history as part of their selling point. Decades ago, the town was faced with Walmart's proposal to build a 110,000 square foot store on the site of what is now the Whiteface Lodge. In 1996, the town of North Elba Planning Board rejected that project, hinging their decision on a single sentence in the land use code that referenced the character of the community. Their decision was held in appellate court. Time is up. Thank you. Next up, Vicki Lowndes, followed by Jim Brooks.
Hi, I'm Rick Lowndes. I'm a caretaker for short-term rentals. Tonight, I would like to submit a petition signed by 217 people who support the right for fairness in short-term rental properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jim Brooks, followed by Jim Rogers.
Good evening. I anticipate that you're going to be adopting a code such as this, and so my purpose here is to point out some of the things that I think are legally questionable, so that we're not adopting a law that's illegal. There are also some practical matters that I'd like you to consider. For instance, you put in the code that it becomes effective immediately upon filing. The code enforcement officer is going to be faced with about 600 applications. There is no way he's going to be able to process those applications without having everybody in violation of your code. So I think what you need to do is address when it becomes effective, to give some lead time for everybody to make your application so that they're not in violation. The designation that you have in section 11.2B7, that you cannot park a vehicle on a public or private street, I believe is illegal because the Court of Appeals in People v. Grant in 306 New York, 258, says you cannot do that because you're favoring residential versus non-residential people on public and private streets. So you might want to amend or revise that because you can't preclude them. On enforcement, while the rules on noise and conduct appear reasonable, who can register an enforceable complaint, and will that reporting person be identified so if unfounded or false, someone can address it either by the municipality as a false report or by the property owner who is subjected to that particular imposition. There will be people that might drive by and say, I don't like that guy and I'm going to report him. And then all of a sudden we have a potential violation. Nowhere in your code does that complainant have to be identified. So his name and address and so on. Will the local police or the state police or the code enforcement officer assist you in enforcing this code? The property owners many times cannot handle 6'2" rugby players. I really would like to know what's the purpose for not counting garages for parking spaces. I just can't figure out why you have that provision in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jim Rogers, followed by Bill Tavares.
My name is Jim Rogers. I live at 151 Hillcrest Avenue. I'm happy to say that not only do I live on Hillcrest Avenue, but 2 of our 3 kids live in town. We have a granddaughter who lives in town, and as a result, we have 3 great-grandchildren that live in the town of North Elba. I want to thank you first for tackling this job finally. And want to thank the pros involved, Ron Briggs and Janet Hurley, who have been advising you, and I think wisely. The thing that has occurred to me so many times with what's been going on tonight is, it seems to me that the only argument that is faced to us is that we can't survive without the money that comes into this community by the short-term renter. I don't think that money should be the only reason you make a law. I don't think that money should be the only consideration for this community. I lived in a neighborhood. I don't live in a neighborhood anymore, and it's the same address I moved into. One house, somebody said 3 houses in there. One house in sight from my front steps is owned by somebody who lives there. The rest of it is on the house and behind me and the house across the street and up the street a bit are owned by the same person, and he's never lived in the house. I have businesses surrounding me, and it's supposed to be resort residential. I just wonder at what stage of point, or what point of this whole thing, Lake Placid reaches a saturation point. And if you just keep making beds, it'll be a lot bigger than a parking lot problem. I'm sorry, I've been complaining, but residential areas really almost don't exist in Lake Placid right now. I think it's thank you for facing this problem.
Thank you. Next up, Bill Tavares, followed by Jim Morganson.
Hi, I'm Bill Tavares. I'm the head coach for USA Luge. I work here, I've lived here for 35 years. I'm raising my family here. First, for some of you speakers, I take offense of you calling our neighborhoods dilapidated. We are working people. We fix these houses when we can, and we live here. You don't live here. To Missy's point on volunteer paramedic, my son is a volunteer fireman. As of now, he will not be able to live in this town. He was one of the first people on the fatality down on the notch. Now our volunteer firemen, who are all volunteers except for the drivers, will have to drive from either Saranac Lake, Wilmington, Jay, well, from what I've heard, that might be the upcoming place. So they will have to drive from there to come and put out your fires. Do you really want that to happen? I know I don't. on Mr. Rogers. On my street, we have, I believe, 8 houses. 3 of them are full-time residents. We call the police department. I'm glad they're here tonight because we have them on speed dial. They're at our house almost every other week. Are you kidding me? You know, we are here as a community. From everything I've heard, we already have laws on the books of residential and commercial. Our problem isn't whether we should have them or not. Enforce the laws. It's your problem. You're causing it. Enforce our laws. It is clearly stated residential and commercial. When Mrs. Brooks and Mr. Brooks had their bed and breakfast up on Maple Street, they had to go through a permit process to get that business done. I see people here that own bed and breakfast. They have to go through permits. And these people just come in, buy houses. One of the houses by me, that is his second house up here that I know of that he rents out. They're not residents. It's a business. Call it what it is and fix it. You know, this is just a Band-Aid on your problem that you guys have caused.
Jim Morganson, followed by Nancy Bernstein. Thank you. After Jim Morganson will be Bertha Josephson.
I need to know, Jim.
Jim Morganson? Thank you. Next up, Bertha.
No.
No. Gone. Okay, next up, Peggy McKellar.
I defer.
Thank you. Next up, Orsi Niebuhr. My apologies, Horst Weber.
The same foreigners. Well, most things have been said, but I don't have to repeat my name. I live at 130 Evans Lane, and I just wanted to make a few points. Most things have been said. If those gentlemen on the head table listen, then I think everything will be perfect. We have, where I live, we have deed restrictions. And it says very simple. Each individual lot conveyed by the grantor shall be used only for the single-family residential purpose. So, and if like Tish Friedlander, Mrs. A few other people mentioned that is if we follow the code, most things are taken care of. We do have districts, and if you, like someone else said, you have a commercial property, if you're Airbnb, whatever it is, in a residential district, you're suspect to maybe extra taxes or whatever. And so if you read the code, take the book out and fix it, and like Mr. Politi said, no law is perfect. You start somewhere and then you have to tweak it every other year, and then eventually we're going to have a perfect law. And as someone said about police, we need the police at night. If everybody would be perfect, we wouldn't have to call the police. In fact, we wouldn't even need the police. And then just one more point. Where I live up there, There is one house regularly rented and up to 20 cars, plus 8 tents in the backyard and 1 tent in the living room. And that's a fact because we do have pictures. And what the new law says, that if you rent your homes as a business, you must pay commercial rates for electricity, maybe for your business. And I think everything can be taken care of if we just put our heads together, and the gentlemen here have started. So.
Hello, my name is Nick Cancro. I live at 265 Lake Placid Club Way. If you're not sure where that is, I encourage you to drive by tomorrow. My 1,750 square foot home is right next door, and I do mean right next door, to the future Walmart of short-term rentals. It is a 7-bedroom, 6-bath, 2 half-bath project under construction. It's been under construction for 4 years. It's a place so large that the town, the realtor, and the owner cannot agree on its size. I've asked for the square footage and I've gotten variances of approximately 2,000 square feet. So, having said that, I'm generally a pro-business, pro-commerce type of individual, and I generally support people doing what they need to do to make a living. And at our last meeting, I made that same point.
That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Next up is Jessica Caprera, followed by Margaret Boyce.
Okay, so I do not live here. So my opinion may not mean much to you, but I'm gonna give it to you anyways. I'm sorry. I traveled here yesterday, 3 hours, and tonight I am staying in an STR. And honestly, I love them. And the only reason I'm still up here is because of the fact that you haven't heard my angle. Like my dad, when I'm in like a mental wreck, right? I ask him his opinion, and he says, Jess, you're so far in the forest, you can't see the treetops. And I kind of feel like maybe another angle is good. Like we love, I'm nervous. You can tell, I'm sorry. I don't know anyone here. But no, I just truly like, I'm not here for the STRs. I'm here for Lake Placid, and I don't think that's gonna change either. Chris Lawrence had a great point. It's my neighbor, I'm from Watertown too. We had Fort Drum, and it's the way you look at things. It's glass half full, it's glass half empty. I don't live here, none of this directly affects me, so I understand there's issues. But I also understand some people do it right. The owners of my STR met me there today. I mean, they took care of everything. They're residents. I mean, you just need to look at all angles, is where I'm at. In case anyone cares. I don't expect an applause. I know it's very divided, but I just kind of want to give you my,
Thank you. Next up, Margaret Boyce, followed by Jonathan Esper. Margaret Boyce. Going once. Jonathan Esper. He will be followed by Sean Donovan.
Hey, good evening. The main reason why I came, I have a house, brand new house at 372 River Road, Lake Placid, New York, just finished last month. So the main reason why I want to talk to you about tonight is I noticed there's one thing that's never mentioned, and that is in all the feedback, is the occupancy based on the number of bedrooms. And what you may not realize is there are so many homes that have like a kid's bunk room in the basement. We usually have like 2-3 sets of bunk beds. And so if you have that 2 times the number of bedrooms plus 2, suddenly that makes it makes it a lot harder for families when they come with a set of 6 kids and they put them all in one room. And I'm not advocating doing hostel style scenarios, and we don't want to have a boarding house kind of mentality to homes. I completely understand they're supposed to be residential, but I think in that cap for number of people, there should be an exemption for young children. I'm not saying more than 2 adults per room, but putting 6 kids, young kids in a room, I think that should be allowed. Second point I want to make is that things always balance out in the long run. You know, that's the nature of business and the economy. You know, the occupancy stats here in Lake Placid are not that high. You may be surprised to know that, like I'm on HomeAway and VRBO, about over the next 60 days, only approximately 15% of properties are actually occupied. A 15% occupancy rate. Those are just stats I can see through my own homeowners account. So if there's only a 15% occupancy over the next 60 days for homes here, that does mean that there's probably an oversupply of homes, and that will likely de-incentivize people from becoming a vacation rental. So there is those economic factors of supply and demand that are somewhat of a mitigating factor, and not to forget about that. The next thing I want to point out is everyone talks about vacation homes as being a business, vacation rentals as being a business. And yes, it is a business. I grew up as a photographer here in the Adirondacks, but it is hard to make a full-time living doing photography, and so operating a vacation rental in Wilmington and also now in Lake Placid is my other half of what I do. So yes, as a resident of the Adirondacks, I do need to have multiple jobs. A lot of us do have multiple income streams, and so that is part of what I do, and I would not be in the place today without the vacation rentals. So yes, it is a business. I'm not going to argue that, but it should be treated as a home-based business. It's not a commercial business. It's not a private residential. It's a home-based business. And there may need to be a third category of zoning or recognition. Thank you. So anyways, So that's what I wanted to point out. And the other final point is, since I just built a brand new home, I put in $800,000 into this community, and I would not have come here normally in this community if I could not have made it a vacation rental. I would not have afforded it. So the only reason why I built this house was because I was going to make it a vacation rental. Otherwise, it would have been a $35,000 lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Sean Donovan, followed by Mimi Hedges.
Good evening. I think most of what I would say probably has been said, but I'll introduce myself, Sean Donovan. I am not born in Lake Placid, but I have lived here for the better part of my life. And it has been the better part of my life living here. This is a wonderful, wonderful community. I'm retired now, but I do some volunteer work and some other part-time stuff where I'm involved with tourists. And many times you hear people that are visiting here, and they're coming here for it's Lake Placid. They're not coming here because there's a nice house on some street somewhere. They're coming here to see Lake Placid. Lodging is secondary. Coming to the community is first. But they always say the people here are so nice, and they're right. They are. But there's fewer and fewer of us, and that's a problem. At the last meeting, some of you may have been to in November, one of our distinguished guests from maybe Philadelphia or Albany or New York, mentioned that the house that he and his wife purchased was on the market for 2 years. And he actually pointed at the room and told us, all of you people had a chance to buy that house and none of you did, so we bought it. And now we're renting it. The people who live in this community are not into buying second houses. They're too busy working and raising their families, all right? And I am rarely the smartest person in the room, but I want to thank the Gold Star people for coming here and educating me and telling me how good it is to have them here in this town and how much it's going to help me. So thank you very much for doing that. There was a letter a few months ago from another absentee property owner here that says her whole motivation for doing it was to share her home. She wants to share her home with other people so they can enjoy the Adirondacks. I have lived here, again, most of my life. I have owned a home here for almost 30 years. I have shared my home at least 500 nights. I have yet to get $1 in rent for that house. Also, these same people that don't live here and own homes and say how it's so vibrant that have these other people come in and stay in a house next to us. Perhaps they could someday, when they come up here to stay here, let us know where they live. Yes. We can go to their house, stay there next to their neighbors, and bring a keg of beer when we go. See how that goes. A lot of these issues with the quality of life don't affect me personally. I am very fortunate. I live out on Averyville. It's quite secluded, very quiet by me. I don't hear these noises. I do have one noise I do hear periodically. I have a neighbor that's out of sight, about 100 yards away, with some very loud kids. And that's great. That's so cool. You hear kids playing and screaming, I still don't know what they're doing over there, but I know they're having a lot of fun. But I speak to close friends of mine, there are no kids around their house at all. This Halloween, go to Hillcrest and see, and it's dark. There are no kids trick-or-treating there. Oh, that's it.
Next up, Mimi Hedges.
Hello, I'm Mimi Hedges. I guess third generation. Some of you know me and my family. My family's owned 2 restaurants in town. My father built the Hannaford complex. And I live on Acorn Street, otherwise known as Forest, before 911, or the 911 change. But I also spend plenty of my time in LA because I'm pursuing a dream that unfortunately I can't pursue here. Otherwise I would be doing it here. Airbnb is a gift, actually. And there's been amazing stuff said, and I don't believe the contentious, I don't know what the word would be, is going to help us, because we do need to work together. It's a gift. My dad finally agreed that we were able to Airbnb our cabin in the back of our house, but it's a gift and a credit package. We have to do an Airbnb because we can't really afford to live in this community anymore. And that's heartbreaking. As some of you guys know, our house is up for sale, which actually I could start sobbing right now. because my sisters and I collectively cannot afford to buy the house, to live in a community that we grew up in, that we have literally put tax money in for over 80, probably 85 years, potentially more, because my grandparents came over from Greece and they moved up here from New York City and raised my uncle and my aunt and my father chose to raise us here, and I'm so grateful for that gift. This town is an amazing gift. It is magical, as Jessica said. There's clearly an issue. My good friend Lori Curtis Dudley, as many of you know her, town clerk, we grew up together. I said, come on over for Halloween this year because I happen to be in town for several months. I also substitute teach when I'm in town. And we had so much candy left over, it was rather heartbreaking. I live, as I said, on Acorn Street, right next to Dave Jones. He's awesome, his house is beautiful. Jim Rogers right up the street, his son across the street, Leslie across the street, and maybe one other family. The rest of it, it's fairly a ghost town. And that to me is really sad because our whole growing up, we ran up and down those streets with couldn't even walk because there were so many kids. And somebody mentioned that you can pay, people pay taxes for the school district. If there's no school district with no kids, the taxes is gonna do nothing. To be honest with you. So I think it's a gift for those of us who need it and who need it to afford to live here. It's awesome, and I hope that there can be some way to figure that out. My last thing that I'm gonna say, there aren't gonna be local experiences with no locals in town. Thank you.
Thank you. That is our last signed up speaker. On behalf of myself, Lori, and Chelsea, thank you for coming out tonight and for being so respectful of each other on this emotional issue. Supervisor, do you have anything to add?
No, it's been a long evening, but on behalf of the Town and Village Board, I want to thank you all for taking the time and making the effort to come out and to express your opinions. We can't make decisions without hearing from all of you. And this is, we understand this is a very controversial and emotional topic, and it's something that we don't take lightly, but it's also a difficult task. So again, I thank everyone, and be safe going home. Thank you.